There are two reasons why blood libels against Jews are such stinging accusations when it comes to Jewish outlooks about the world. In this week's parashah, it's a double portion, Acharei Mot Kedoshim, we have two different inyanim, two different subjects that come to define, at least in some way, Jews' attitudes about life and children. On the one hand, set outside the text, Jews are encouraged to take on the pursuit of holiness as a central endeavor in their lives. And looked at expansively, and this could even be a third category of why it's so stinging to have been blamed in blood libels for either crucifying Christian children or worse, murdering them for using their blood in our recipes for matzah on Pesach. It says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. And given that broad, overarching, ethical entreaty, we, of course, pursue not only life in keeping to our own culture and ways, life in general we value and treasure, but we are to extend our love for life out to our neighbors and want for them what we want for ourselves. But more particularly, the two that I mentioned from the start, two different inyanim, two different subjects. The first being that we are to reject entirely any connection with the sacrifice of children as it was expressed in the ancient world through the Torah's language. When it came to the worship of Molech, that God who demanded child sacrifice, absolute and utter rejection. We were to destroy their places of worship. And one of the reasons why the language is so extreme and the commandment so harsh is in order to eradicate that practice of child sacrifice. Secondly, in our parsha, in Acharei Mot, God says and instructs Moses to teach the people, Al kein amarti livnei Yisrael, thus I say to the children of Israel, Kol nefesh mikem lo tochal dam, you shall not eat any blood. V'hager hagar b'tochachem lo yochal dam. And even the sojourner among you does not eat the blood. Blood is seen as the very staff of life. And it represents that which is not in our hands to ultimately make decisions about, not for children and not for adults. And thusly, when Jews in the Roman Egyptian theater heard Apion claim that Jews crucified Christian children, as some of the earliest blood libel texts that we have read, or they heard that children's blood, Christian children's blood, was being used in the making of our matzah, the sting, the hurt, the confrontation was so severe, and it smacked of absolute hatred and rejection of a Jewish outlook and a Jewish approach to life, a Jewish conception of the sanctity of all life. Rashi explains on Kol Nefesh Mikem, anyone in your midst shall not eat blood. Lahazhir Gedolim al Haktanim. This phrase comes to warn adults regarding the minors among you. Don't even let the children taste of the blood. We're so careful with the notion of bringing our children into our cultural milieu, our cultural context, teaching them, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. We want for our neighbors what we want for ourselves. Teaching them that blood is the staff of life, and teaching them to reject all possibilities of having children pay ultimate prices for the worship and for the traditions that must be upheld in any religious pursuit. Any adult community knows that children are our guarantors, or the Jewish way of thinking is that our children are indeed our guarantors. In Shir Shim Rabbah, when it's talking about why we even merited receiving Torah, it was because in the end, Moses promised that our children will be our guarantors. They will learn, we will teach them, the next generation will embrace the central and essential Jewish values. L'chaim, life. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. We want for our neighbors what we want for ourselves. And lo tochal dam. Do not eat blood, because it is a symbol of life which is only in God's hands and not yours. So Rashi helps put that in focus in medieval Europe. There he lived in Troyes. There he taught in the Rhineland. And though William of Norwich in 13th century England had become a martyr among the Christians, and the blood libels alleging Jews murdered non-Jewish children and used their blood for rituals, though all of that swirled, Rashi insisted we focus on this notion and understand that it is an essential value to pass along to our children, that we so deeply respect the blood, the lives of our own people and every human being, that we must maintain our holiness by eating what is kosher to us, what is permitted. When a Jew eats what is kosher and avoids what is not, one insists upon raising the values of our tradition as much as just keeping the ritual boundaries of our tradition. And so education doesn't mean just tell the child. Education means keep the child from eating that which is forbidden, and continue that as a practice in one's home, as a practice in one's life. Do not eat the blood. Eat what is permitted to you. Stake a claim in this world and lift the value of life and the pursuit of goodness for all humanity by eating kosher. Rashi's understanding of education is not simply to tell one what to do, for a teacher to tell it over, for a parent to say what is right, but for parents and children, all of us, B'nai Yisrael, children of God, children of Israel, all of us, to embrace our way of life, our way of eating, in order to express our values of l'chaim, life, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, wanting goodness for our neighbors, and pursuing all that will fill our lives, biktusha, with holiness. Shabbat Shalom.